A Werewolf Shifter Romance. The Lunar Curse. Prologue. The wind howled like a mourning spirit through the towering black pines of the ancient forest. Red light bled across the leaves as the blood moon climbed above the tree line, casting a crimson sheen over the hidden clearing below. A young woman, barefoot and cloaked in silver-threaded robes, ran her fingers along the scarred bark of an ancient oak. Her name was Selene of the Mooncrest, last-born daughter of the Coven. Her breath fogged in the cold, but her heart beat like thunder, not from fear, but from the nearness of the one who waited for her in the shadows. From the darkened edge of the woods, a towering wolf stepped into the firelight. He shifted into a man, broad-shouldered, with tawny hair and storm-gray eyes that softened when he looked at her. "Thorn of Silver Hollow!" she whispered, running to him. They collided in a breathless kiss, one that defied both pacts and prophecy. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured into her hair. "If they find us—" "They won't," Selene said. "But even if they do, I'd rather burn beside you than live without you." He cupped her face. "Then let's end this hiding. Let's tell them. Prove love doesn't bow to law." Before she could answer, flames erupted behind them. Dozens of wolves, fully shifted, burst from the trees. At their head was a man cloaked in obsidian armor, his expression cold and unflinching. High Alpha Malric Vale, Thorn's own uncle. "Traitor," Vale spat. "You bring filth into our bloodline." Selene stepped forward, eyes glowing with moonlight. "I bring truth, love, unity. Then you bring death." Magic crackled from Selene's palms as the wolves advanced. Thorn shifted and lunged to shield her, but it was no use. The fire engulfed them both. Later, in a stone circle beneath the blood moon, Selene knelt in chains. Her hair was scorched, her magic suppressed, her eyes unbroken. A circle of witches surrounded her, weeping. "I curse myself," she declared, voice hollow. "Let my line bear my sin." A single drop of her blood fell onto the moonstone altar, sizzling like acid. "From this night forward, every daughter born of my name shall suffer. On the full moon, her wolf shall vanish, her bond shall fade, until true sacrifice seals what law has broken." In the shadows, Malric Vale watched with cold satisfaction, and he smiled. But curses never die, they just wait to be triggered. Present day. The forest clearing shimmered beneath silver mist. A girl lay crumpled on the moss, her skin pale, breath shallow. Lyra Mooncrest stirred, gasping as her eyes flew open. She clawed at her chest. Where once her wolf stirred, there was nothing. Her scream echoed through the forest, full of fear, rage, and something ancient awakening. The curse has awakened. A blood-red moon rises again in the sky, just like before. Chapter 1. The Silver Hollow Packlands shimmered in the amber glow of dawn. Frost clung to pine needles, and the crisp mountain air smelled of pine, moss, and the first hints of winter. In the heart of the training field, a dozen wolves sparred, muscles rippling and paws kicking up frost-dusted dirt. But Ronan Blackthorn wasn't watching them. He stood at the edge of the field, arms crossed over his broad chest, sharp eyes focused on the girl sitting alone on the training bench. She had her arms wrapped around herself despite the rising sun, and her skin, usually a sun-kissed bronze, was pale as ash. Lyra Mooncrest, his mate, his everything, and lately the source of a growing, bone-deep dread he couldn't shake. "Break's over, Alpha," came a teasing voice beside him. Ronan didn't turn. "Jace, take over drills." Jace blinked, eyebrows raised. "You've skipped 4 sessions this week, Ronan. If your father sees—" "I said take over." The command in his voice ended the discussion. Ronan was already walking away. He crossed the field in long strides, each step purposeful, his boots crunching on gravel and grass. Lyra didn't notice him until he was right in front of her. She looked up, startled, quickly trying to compose herself. Too late. Her lips were bloodless. Her eyes, usually so bright and defiant, flickered with exhaustion. "You're cold," he said softly, shrugging off his hoodie and draping it over her shoulders before she could protest. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice barely above a whisper. Ronan knelt in front of her, hands gripping her knees. "You're not. You haven't been. You can't keep pretending this is nothing." "I'm just tired," she said quickly. "The full moon's close. You know I've always gotten weird around it." "Not like this," he growled. "You're fading, Lyra. And I feel it. Every time your heartbeat weakens, it's like something's ripping through my chest." Lyra looked away. "Don't, Ronan." "Don't what? Care? Fight for you." His voice cracked. "You're my mate. That means something. That is everything." She closed her eyes, biting back tears. How could she tell him that the emptiness inside her grew worse every month? That when the full moon rose, her wolf, her soul, slipped further and further from her grasp? No one knew why, not even her. "Mark me," she said suddenly. Ronan blinked. "What?" Her eyes flew open. "Mark me. Now, before the next full moon. Maybe it'll anchor me. Maybe if we complete the bond, it'll stop this, whatever this is." He was silent, stunned, before slowly cupping her face in his hands. "Lyra, don't say that unless you mean it." "I mean it," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not afraid to be yours. I'm afraid of vanishing before I ever get the chance." He didn't hesitate. His lips met hers in a kiss full of desperation and devotion. She clung to him like a lifeline. That night, the Silver Hollow pack gathered beneath the full moon. The marking ceremony was supposed to take place in front of the elders, but Ronan had refused. This wasn't a political move. This was personal. Only the trees bore witness as he led her into the sacred glade, moonlight filtering through silver branches, the air pulsing with ancient magic. "Are you sure?" he whispered. Lyra nodded. Her pulse beat rapidly under her skin as he tilted her head, baring her neck. His canines elongated. He lowered his mouth, and just before the bite he whispered, "You're mine forever." Then a scream tore from Lyra's throat. Her knees buckled. She clutched at her chest, eyes wide with terror. "Lyra!" She collapsed. Ronan caught her just in time, cradling her as her body convulsed. He stared in horror as the light in her eyes flickered and dimmed, and her wolf, her essence, vanished like smoke. "No," he choked. "No, no, no, stay with me." Her skin was cold, her heartbeat faint, her breathing shallow. The bond flickered, then failed, and in the shadows of the forest, something ancient stirred. Ronan screams her name into the night as the blood moon rises above the trees, its light falling across Lyra's unconscious form, and something dark watching from the woods. Chapter 2. The forest hummed with the night's energy, the sharp call of an owl slicing through the stillness as Ronan paced frantically around Lyra's prone form. His fingers brushed her face again, desperate to feel warmth, but the coldness was insistent, an unforgiving chill that threatened to steal everything away. "Please," he whispered, hoarse with fear. "Wake up, Lyra. Please don't leave me. Don't." Her chest barely rose, and for a moment he thought he heard the faintest echo of her heartbeat, but it faltered, just like her breath. Every second felt like an eternity. With a cry, he stood and turned, stumbling toward the woods. He needed help. He needed someone who could fix this. "She can't die like this. Heal her." Ronan's voice carried across the clearing, frantic and raw. The trees seemed to whisper in response, their shadows long and sinister, as if they too were hiding from the truth that was unraveling in front of him. But soon the sound of footfalls broke through the silence, slow and deliberate. The eldest healer of Silver Hollow, Elder Malin, appeared in the moonlight like a shadow. Her frail, bent frame seemed impossibly old, her eyes clouded with age, but sharp with knowledge. She had seen many things in her years, things Ronan had no interest in knowing. Still, he couldn't turn her away. Ronan's voice cracked. She's dying. You have to help her. Elder Malin approached the unconscious Lyra with a quiet reverence, her ancient hands brushing over Lyra's chest. She murmured words in an ancient tongue, her voice rising with an energy that Ronan couldn't understand. The air grew thick, pulsing with magic, but nothing changed. She's fading, the healer whispered, her voice somber, as if she'd already known what was happening. But there's something more. Ronan knelt beside Lyra, gripping her hand. Tell me what to do. Elder Malin looked down at the girl, a sad smile tugging at the corner of her lips. There are forces that have always lived within your pack, young Alpha. Forces older than the trees themselves. Forces that you cannot fight with strength alone. Ronan's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? The Mooncrest Curse, Elder Malin murmured. It's a long-buried secret, hidden by those who came before us. What is it? What's happening to her? The healer hesitated, her ancient gaze flickering with sorrow. Lyra is part of something far older than either of you. The curse! She paused, eyes flickering to Lyra's still body. It's tied to the bloodline of her mother, to her ancestors. Ronan's heart stuttered in his chest. I don't care about curses. I care about Lyra. How do I save her? The curse is not something that can be undone lightly. Young Alpha, Elder Malin warned, her voice low. It's ancient, written in blood. Her life is bound to a sacrifice that neither you nor she will understand until it's too late. Later that night, Ronan sat by Lyra's side in their shared cabin, unable to tear his gaze away from her. The moon outside was full and silent, casting silver beams through the window. He held her hand, brushing his thumb over her skin, desperately searching for a sign that she was still there. Every flicker of movement sent his heart racing. Every shallow breath made him wish he could rip the curse from her body and take it for himself. He could feel the bond, faint, flickering like a candle at the end of its wick. Suddenly a sound. Lyra stirred, her lashes fluttering against the pale light of the room. Ronan's breath caught in his throat. Lyra! His voice trembled as he leaned in closer. She opened her eyes slowly, as if the effort itself were too much. But when their gazes locked, a strange, intense sadness passed through her. He didn't understand it, but he knew it wasn't just fear. I found something, Lyra whispered, voice barely audible, her fingers tracing the pendant around her neck. She hadn't worn it in days, her mother's necklace, an heirloom that had been passed down through generations. Ronan frowned. What did you find? She pulled the necklace out, clutching it tightly as though it were a lifeline. A grimoire in my mother's grave. The answer is in there. I think it's the key to all of this. What are you talking about? He asked, panic rising in his chest. The curse, she said, her voice growing weaker with each word. It's true. It's been in my family for generations. The mate bond weakens and dies if love isn't severed. Or, she faltered, her lips trembling, if a sacrifice isn't made. Ronan's chest tightened. Sacrifice? What does that mean? I don't know yet. Lyra's eyes shut briefly. But I know what I have to do. Later that night, the cabin was silent except for the soft rustling of the trees outside. Ronan sat by the window, his gaze fixed on the stars, the ache in his chest growing unbearable. He knew Lyra was slipping away from him, and worse, that there was nothing he could do to stop it. And then the door creaked open. Lyra stood there, silhouetted in the doorway, her eyes darker than he'd ever seen them. Lyra! His voice broke. She stepped inside, her face pale and drawn but determined. I can't keep living like this, Ronan. Her voice was strained. I love you, but I need to go. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. No, he said, standing. Lyra, don't say that. You don't have to go. We'll figure this out together. But she was already shaking her head. It's not a choice anymore. I don't want to be the one who drags you down. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she held herself together as best as she could. I love you enough to leave, she whispered, so you can survive. Before Ronan could protest, she kissed him, a kiss full of love and longing. But as the kiss deepened, something in the air shifted. He pulled away, gasping for breath, but Lyra was no longer there. She was gone. In her place was a single note, placed gently on the bed. I love you enough to leave so you can survive. Ronan's heart shattered as he stared at the note, the weight of her words crushing him. And then, from the edge of the trees, a shadow moved. Someone or something was watching. And it wasn't just the curse that had claimed her. Chapter 3. The forest had never felt so vast, so empty, so cruel. Ronan tore through the underbrush, ignoring the sting of branches scratching at his skin, ignoring the pulse pounding in his ears. His boots left angry tracks in the mud as he ran, calling her name into the silence. Lyra! His voice echoed between the trees, hollow, unanswered. Lyra! Each shout came out more broken than the last. He'd shifted twice already, his wolf clawing for control, demanding to track their mate. But something was wrong. Her scent had vanished completely, like the earth itself had swallowed her whole. And Ronan's wolf didn't understand why. Neither did he. All that remained was the letter, folded, unapologetic, final. I love you enough to leave so you can survive. Survive what? A curse? A prophecy neither of them understood? Ronan's thoughts burned with fury, pain, and the ache of betrayal, even though a part of him knew Lyra believed she was protecting him. That didn't make it easier. That didn't stop the rage building beneath his skin. His wolf snapped, pressing to the surface, snarling just beneath his breath. Without her, he was unmoored, untethered, a future alpha with no mate, no calm, no purpose. The wind shifted. Ronan paused, chest heaving, the trees around him whispering things he couldn't bear to hear. Somewhere a twig cracked. He spun, nothing but shadows. Coward, he growled to himself. You ran and left me to drown. He turned back toward the pack lands hours later, empty-handed, exhausted, changed. The silver hollow compound was tense when he returned. Eyes followed him as he passed through the main clearing. Wolves he'd fought beside, grown up with, hunted with, now looking at him like a stranger. Or worse, a threat. Whispers floated through the air like embers from a dying fire. She left without a trace. The bond shattered just like that. I heard it was a curse. Something in his bloodline. Maybe he was never meant to be alpha. Ronan didn't need his heightened senses to hear them. He felt every syllable like a blade to the ribs. It was always this way with grief. It didn't just get you. It made you vulnerable, a walking wound others could poke and prod. He made it to the council house, only to find silence where there should have been support. The elders weren't waiting. No one was, except one man, Magnus Vale, the outsider. He was leaned casually against the old oak banister, a faint smirk pulling at his lips, dressed in black with a silver ring glinting on his finger, an heirloom of a line long exiled from Silver Hollow generations ago. But now he stood as if he belonged. Ronan stopped cold, every instinct tensing. Rough day, Alpha, Magnus said smoothly, straightening. You have no right to be here. On the contrary, Magnus replied, feigning sympathy. The pack deserves strong leadership in times of instability. And right now. He paused, stepping forward, voice low. You're a mess, Ronan. A danger to yourself. To everyone. Ronan's fists clenched at his sides, barely containing the growl, curling in his throat. She's missing, he hissed. And all you care about is power. Magnus' eyes gleamed. The truth is they're scared. Your wolf is unbalanced. You can barely hold your form without losing control. And now the whispers about you being cursed. He tilted his head. That's not me talking, Ronan. That's your pack. Ronan lunged a step forward before stopping himself. His pulse was wild. His instincts screamed to tear the man apart. But that would only prove his point. Let them whisper, Ronan spat. I'll find her. I'll bring her back. And then they'll see. Will you? Magnus cut in. Because right now she's gone. You're spiraling. And the elders? They're listening. Ronan froze. They asked me, Magnus said softly. They asked if I would step in. Temporarily. Bring some stability while you recover. No, Ronan growled. They wouldn't. But even as he said it, he saw the truth in Magnus' eyes. The doubt, the opportunity, the betrayal. And then Magnus leaned in, voice like poison. I'll help Silver Hollow if they remove you as heir. Ronan stood frozen, heart thunderstruck, as Magnus turned and walked away, already acting like the Alpha. And high above them, another full moon began to rise. Chapter 4. The ruins of Helwyn were a graveyard of forgotten magic. Crumbling towers pierced the gray sky like broken bones, and vines coiled through the shattered remains of stone gates that once guarded a proud coven. Now, the ruins whispered only sorrow and exile. Lyra stepped cautiously through the overgrowth, her breath clouding in the chill that seemed to cling to this forsaken land. Her cloak was threadbare, her boots were soaked, but none of that compared to the weight in her chest, the hollow ache left by Ronan's absence and the curse twisting deeper into her soul. Every night since she'd left him, she felt it gnawing at her, a quiet decay. Her wolf still hadn't returned. The bond, frayed and thin, still tugged at her heart like a phantom limb, but she couldn't turn back. Not now. She had to break the curse. A flutter of movement ahead snapped her out of her thoughts. From the shadows of a collapsed archway, a figure emerged, a hunched old woman, wrapped in feathers and bones, her eyes glowing faintly blue. Lyra tensed, one hand moving instinctively to the dagger at her belt. No need for blades, Mooncrest girl, the woman rasped. I smelled your sorrow the moment you stepped into my land. Who are you? Lyra asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her gut. Elda, last of the Helwyn sisters. She circled Lyra slowly as if studying a wound. And you, child of a dying bloodline, you carry the curse like a brand. I need to break it, Lyra said without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes. Elda's lips twisted. Not quite a smile. Not quite pity. Many have tried. Most failed, because breaking it comes with a price. Lyra's chest tightened. Tell me. The old witch's voice dropped low, laced with memory and pain. The curse was born from a betrayal of the pacts and the covens, bound by blood and magic. To break it, both lovers must willingly sacrifice what defines them most. Lyra blinked, confusion battling dread. What defines us? For him, it is the wolf, Elda whispered. For you, the magic in your veins. Lyra's stomach churned. You mean if we both give up what makes us who we are? Only then can the curse die. That night, Lyra sat beside a flickering fire, her fingers trembling around a worn page of her mother's grimoire. The words blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Sacrifice the soul to save the bond. She wasn't sure she had the strength, but she knew Ronan would, and that terrified her more than anything, because if he gave up his wolf, he'd no longer be Alpha. He'd no longer belong to Silver Hollow. He'd lose everything. Her breath hitched. She couldn't ask that of him. She wouldn't, so she trained instead. Elda forced her through hours of grueling spell work, pushing her to the brink, channeling old bloodlines, forbidden chants, elemental control. Her body ached. Her hands blistered. Her magic screamed. But it was the dreams that hurt the most. Tonight's dream was different. She was standing on the Silver Hollow cliffside, moonlight bathing the pines below in silver fire. Wind howled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and smoke. Then she saw him, Ronan. He stumbled toward her, blood smeared across his face, eyes wild with pain. His chest rose and fell in labored gasps. "Lyra!" he whispered, falling to his knees. "I've searched. I can't. Please come home." Her heart clenched. She took a step forward. Suddenly, the forest behind him shifted. Dark shapes emerged, twisted wolves of smoke and shadow, eyes burning like embers. They circled him, low growls rising like thunder. "Ronan!" she cried. He looked up, eyes wide, pleading, just as the shadows lunged. She screamed, reaching for him. Lyra jolted awake, sweat pouring down her face, her hand outstretched toward nothing. The echo of Ronan's scream still lingered in the air. Was it just a dream or a warning? Chapter 5. The Silver Hollow arena was carved into the earth like a scar, ringed by jagged stones and thick pine trees. It had once been a place of celebration, where future alphas proved their worth, surrounded by the howls of loyal packmates. Now it buzzed with uncertainty, suspicion, division. Ronan stood alone in the center, shirtless beneath the pale morning sky. The cold bit at his skin, but he didn't feel it. His blood was already boiling. He could hear them, his pack, whispering from the stone terraces above. He's lost control of his wolf. The Mooncrest girl cursed him. Silver Hollow needs strength, not sentiment. His fists clenched at his sides. His wolf prowled just beneath his skin, snarling in protest. Not at the trial, at the absence of her. Lyra. He hadn't seen her face in weeks. Not in the waking world. Only in dreams or nightmares. But now was not the time for grief. He had to win. Not for the title. For her. For the pack. If he fell now, Silver Hollow would fall with him. At the northern gate, a figure stepped forward. His opponent, Tamar, son of the former Beta, broad-shouldered, arrogant, smirking. He wore the smug look of a wolf who thought the fight was already won. Alpha Fenric, Ronan's father, stood between them, silver hair braided back tight. His voice rang through the arena like a blade drawn from a sheath. This is not a duel of vengeance, but of leadership, of strength and loyalty. Whoever yields or fails to rise loses the claim to Alpha. Ronan didn't flinch. He met Tamar's gaze and saw it, doubt. Even Tamar didn't believe the pack would follow Ronan anymore. But Ronan wasn't fighting to be followed. He was fighting because he still believed in what the pack could be. The moment the horn blew, Tamar lunged. Ronan sidestepped, fast as lightning. But Tamar recovered with a savage backhand that caught him across the jaw. Blood sprayed, warm and metallic. The crowd gasped. Ronan staggered but didn't fall. He steadied himself, growled low, and shifted. His wolf form was sleek and powerful, gray streaked with silver, eyes burning like winter fire. Tamar followed, shifting midair as he leapt again. They clashed. Fur flew. Claws scraped stone. Roars and growls echoed through the valley. Ronan fought with control, precision, but something felt off. Tamar was too reckless, too wild. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to distract. And then Ronan smelled it. Rogue. Too late. A second wolf exploded from the shadows of the southern gate, streaking toward the arena like a missile. Dark fur. Yellow eyes. Not pack. The rogue slammed into Ronan's side mid-lunge, sending him crashing into the wall of the arena. Pain cracked through his ribs. The crowd screamed. Coward! Alpha Fenric shouted. This was not part of the trial. But the rogue didn't stop. It darted past Tamar and leapt again, jaws wide. Ronan rolled, barely avoiding the crushing bite, and struck out with his claws. Blood sprayed, but the rogue didn't falter. It moved like something possessed, desperate. Furious, Ronan dug deep. He could barely stand, but his wolf wouldn't submit. He hurled himself into the rogue, slamming them both to the dirt. With a final burst of strength, He sank his fangs into its shoulder and flung it from the ring. The rogue hit the stone, shifted midair, and crumpled into a heap. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tamar had stopped moving. Even Fenric was silent. The rogue coughed, blood leaking from his mouth, and turned his head to face Ronan. "She didn't leave you," he rasped. Ronan froze. "She was driven out." The words struck harder than any blow. Before Ronan could demand more, the rogue's eyes rolled back and he collapsed, dead. Ronan stood in the blood-streaked dirt, the words echoing in his mind. Driven out? By who? And why? The trial was over, but something darker had just begun. Chapter 6. The wind howled through the ruins of Halwyn like a cry from the past. Lyra stood alone at the cliff's edge, the tattered hem of her cloak snapping behind her like wings of shadow. The salt of the sea below stung her nostrils, but it couldn't chase away the feeling that had clawed its way into her soul. Pain, but not hers. Ronan's. It struck in the middle of the night like a bolt through her heart, raw, guttural, suffocating. She had jolted awake, clutching her chest as if her ribs had split apart. The bond between them, dulled but not severed, had flared to life. "Ronan!" she whispered into the darkness, and then she saw it, in her mind's eye, clearer than any dream. His body, broken and bloodied, sprawled across the trial arena, a rogue wolf lying dead beside him. His wolf's eyes, wild, pained, lost. She stumbled backward, gasping, her back hitting the cold stone wall of the cavern behind her. "No, no, please." Her wolf surged inside her, howling to be freed. And for the first time in weeks, she shifted, not by force, not in pain, but in pure wild will. Her paws hit the ground, sleek and silver. Her fur shimmered under the moonlight that had once weakened her. Now she ran, not away, but toward the bond. Toward him. She tore through the forest, wind and leaves biting at her. Branches whipped her face, but she didn't slow. Ronan was in danger, and she had made a mistake. Leaving him was supposed to save him, but someone had used her absence as a weapon. She reached the outskirts of Silver Hollow just before dawn, and froze. Guards, 5 of them, armed, patrolling like soldiers on a war front. She recognized their scent, not pure-blood wolves of the Hollow, Magnus men, interlopers. Lyra flattened into the underbrush, her heart pounding against her ribs. So it was true. Magnus had moved in, like a vulture over a dying beast. Her lip curled in a silent snarl. She shifted back, silently, crouched behind a rotting log. Her body trembled, not from exhaustion, but fury. Her blood boiled with the need to fight. But even in rage, she was not reckless. That's when the silver blur appeared. It darted between the trees, too quick to be a wolf, too bright to be natural. The fox, Elda's familiar. Its eyes glinted like moonlight on frost as it turned to look at her, then took off deeper into the woods. Lyra didn't hesitate. She followed. They weaved through a hidden path, long forgotten and overgrown. It reeked of old magic, wild, dangerous, untouched. A memory brushed against her, a tale her mother once whispered of a secret path the Mooncrest line had used to reach the sacred grove long before the forest grew thick with suspicion. When the fox stopped, Lyra nearly collapsed. The grove. It stood like a cathedral of nature. Trees curved in an ancient circle, their roots tangled together like the fingers of giants. In the center, half buried in moss and moonlight, lay the grove stone. Her breath caught. It was taller than her, carved with runes in a language only the blood of witches could read. She stepped forward, the hum of ancestral magic tightening the air around her. Her fingers trembled as they reached out and touched the stone. The world vanished. Fire, screams, smoke choked her lungs as she stumbled through the vision. The heat scorched her skin as a stake rose from the earth. A woman, barefoot, long-haired, proud-eyed, stood bound in chains. The original Mooncrest witch. Lyra couldn't move, couldn't speak. The crowd roared, calling her a monster, a temptress, a curse, but the witch never looked at them. She looked up at the moon, whispering words in a forgotten tongue as the flames climbed higher, and then her gaze snapped directly to Lyra. "You must choose," she said, voice like wind over ice. "Sacrifice or burn." The fire exploded. Lyra awoke in the dirt beside the stone, drenched in sweat and tears. But something was different now. Something had followed her out of the vision. The witch's voice still echoed in her ears. "You must choose." Chapter 7. A heavy fog hung low over Silver Hollow, as if the forest itself grieved what was coming. Inside the council hall, a fire blazed in the hearth, but it couldn't warm the chill clinging to the elders' silence. The round table of leadership, once a symbol of unity, now sat fractured by doubt. Magnus Vale stood at its head, all swagger and shadow. His black cloak billowed behind him like a storm cloud. Around his neck, the insignia of Shadowclaw gleamed, wolf fangs forged from iron and ash. "Silver Hollow has grown fragile," he said smoothly, voice like silk-hiding thorns. "And what happens to fragile things when left unattended?" He let the question hang in the air. Elder Karen cleared his throat, voice barely audible. "We still have Ronan." Magnus smiled without warmth. "Do you?" Across the room, Ronan leaned against the far stone pillar, arms crossed over his chest, fury simmering beneath his calm. Bruises from the trial still marked his jaw, but his spine was unbowed. "We've never needed your protection," he growled. "But you need something," Magnus countered. "Half the pack whispers that the Alpha's line is cursed, that your mate abandoned you, that your wolf is broken." A murmur of discomfort rippled through the room. Ronan's eyes flared gold. "My wolf is not broken." "Then where is your mate?" Magnus asked, soft but lethal. "Where is the balance the moon demands?" Silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Ronan's pulse thundered in his ears. He couldn't let them believe Magnus. He couldn't let him take the hollow. Not now. Not when Lyra might be coming back. Later, when the moon hung low and the council had dispersed, still undecided, still shaken, Ronan slipped into the Alpha archives beneath the council hall. Dust coated the air and ancient stone tablets lined the walls, etched with generations of laws, pacts, and secrets. He lit a lantern and descended into the vault, guided by instinct and desperation. If the Mooncrest curse had an origin, it would be here. Hours passed. His fingers bled from unrolling brittle scrolls and brushing soot from forgotten texts. Then he found it, a scroll bound in silver twine, sealed with the Mooncrest insignia, a crescent moon entwined with a wolf's fang. He broke the seal. The parchment crumbled at the edges as he unrolled it. At the top, in ancient script, "Pact of Union, Mooncrest, and Hollow." His breath caught. He read on, eyes darting over each faded line until one verse made his hands tremble. "Only when both halves bleed will the bond be whole. Only in pain shared shall the curse be undone." Ronan's heart pounded. Lyra's sacrifice hadn't been enough, because he hadn't made his own. She'd bled for him, abandoned everything, and he had only suffered the absence, not made the offering. He clenched his fists. "If she comes back," he whispered, "I won't let her carry it alone." But just above him, in the shadows of the rafters, someone else listened. Eyes like coal, smile like venom. Magnus Vale. He slithered down silently, fingers brushing the scroll Ronan had left behind. His lips curled as he read the line. "Only when both halves bleed." "Oh, little wolf," Magnus murmured, "if sacrifice is what you need." He rolled the scroll tight and tucked it into his cloak. "Then I'll make sure one of you bleeds too much." As Magnus disappeared into the night, a shadow wolf trailed him, its fangs dripping black ichor, its eyes fixed on Lyra's scent. Chapter 8. The moon swelled above the horizon, fat and glowing like a promise carved in silver. Shadows danced across the canopy as Lyra moved like a wraith through the outer woods of Silver Hollow. Her heart beat in rhythm with the land, her feet light upon familiar soil. Each step forward burned. The sacred grove shimmered ahead, cloaked in moonlight, veiled from the ordinary. She hadn't seen it since before the curse awakened. Now everything felt different. Every tree seemed to whisper her name. Every gust of wind carried his scent. Ronan. Her pulse skittered. He was near, closer than breath. She felt him in the air in her bones. Their bond was a taut thread strung between hearts stretched too long across silence. She placed her palm against the grove's ancient stone, the surface humming under her skin. The vision struck her like lightning. The Mooncrest witch, the flames, her screams. But this time Lyra didn't look away. She watched the witch turn her eyes toward her through the blaze, ancient, burning with pain and clarity. To love without sacrifice is to chain fate to ruin, the vision whispered. One must choose to burn or let the other be devoured. Then it was gone. Leaves rustled behind her. Lyra turned, and there he stood, Ronan, eyes wild, chest heaving. The moment froze, the air between them thick with unspoken words. "You're here," he breathed, voice raw. She took one step forward, then another. "I had to come back." His jaw clenched. "After everything, you disappeared. No word, no trace, just a note." "I left because I loved you," she whispered. "I was dying, Ronan. You were dying. The curse. I would have faced death for you." His voice cracked. "But you didn't even give me the chance." Tears welled in her eyes. "And if you had died for me, what then? I would have burned alone." The grove pulsed around them, as if listening. Ronan's voice dropped to a whisper. "I searched every night. I howled until my throat bled. My wolf nearly lost his mind." "I know," she said, stepping close enough to feel his heat. "I heard you, even from the ruins." He reached for her. "Lyra." Their lips met. It wasn't a kiss of peace. It was a kiss of war, desperate, aching fire and frost. Their magic surged, crashing like waves colliding. Her hands clutched his shirt, his fingers tangled in her hair. For a moment, everything else fell away. But then, a howl tore through the grove. Low, sinister, familiar. They froze. Ronan's head snapped toward the trees. "Shadowclaw." Another howl answered. Closer this time. Lyra's heart dropped. "They found me." He grabbed her wrist. "Then we make our stand." From the trees, shadows flickered. Too many eyes, too many teeth. As the couple stood back to back beneath the sacred moonlight, the first of the Shadowclaw wolves stepped into the clearing, wearing the face of someone they once trusted. Chapter 9. The moon bled red over Silver Hollow. From the cliffs overlooking the valley, its ominous glow painted the treetops crimson. The blood moon approached, a once-in-a-century lunar eclipse, the only window to break the Mooncrest curse. Ronan stood at the center of the ancient clearing, a circle of wolves around him, scarred, bloodied, but loyal. The grove pulsed with tension, its roots heavy with the weight of prophecy and war. Smoke curled from the sacred fire, its flames blue and unnatural. Lyra stood opposite him, robed in silver threads that shimmered like starlight. Her hair tumbled in wild waves down her back, her eyes glowing gold in the moonlight. "We don't have much time," Ronan said, stepping closer, voice low and rough from days without rest. She met his gaze. "I'm ready." The pack had gathered. Allies had returned. Even those who had once doubted now stood behind them, because Magnus Vale had made his move too soon. Hours earlier, his army had breached the western border, turning neighboring villages into burning symbols of his wrath. But Silver Hollow fought back. Ronan and Lyra had led them side by side. Alpha and Mooncrest, flame and fong. Now the final battle wasn't with claws, it was with fate. Elda stood beside the flame, her crooked hands trembling with the scroll she had carried for a century. "Once bound by blood and bone," she chanted, "let the bond be whole again." Ronan reached for Lyra's hand. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered, "even when it broke me." Tears rimmed her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I knew the only way to save you was to leave, but I broke myself doing it." He drew her into his arms, forehead pressed to hers. "Then let's never break again." Their lips met, softer this time. Not war, peace. Not goodbye, but forever. The sacred fire flared. Around them, the grove trembled. Magic thickened the air like honey. Elda raised the ceremonial blade, silver, etched with runes of old. Their hands clasped around its hilt. "To end the curse," Elda rasped, "you must sacrifice what defines you." Ronan looked to Lyra. She nodded, brave and unshaking. He made the first cut, his palm split open, blood dripping onto the stone. Then Lyra, a hiss of pain, then a shimmer of light as her blood met his. The fire roared. The earth cracked. The bond between them pulled taut, blazing, ancient, unbreakable. But before the magic could seal, a sudden darkness swept over the grove. A screech tore through the night, and then chaos. Black mist surged like a wave. Wolves howled in confusion. The fire sputtered, and from the shadows a scream. "Lyra!" Ronan lunged, too late. Magnus appeared in a flash of shadow, eyes glowing violet, face twisted with fury. His claws dug into Lyra's shoulders as he ripped her from the circle. "No!" Ronan roared, sprinting forward. The spell broke. The grove shattered with a boom of sound. Wind tore through the trees. The sacred fire snuffed out. And then they were gone. Magnus and Lyra vanished into darkness. Only her scream remained. Ronan dropped to his knees, the blood still fresh on the stone. The ritual was broken, the bond incomplete, and the love of his life was in the hands of the one monster who would see them both destroyed. Chapter 10. The scent of her blood clung to the wind. Ronan ran faster. Branches whipped at his face. The forest blurred around him. Nothing mattered but the trail. His wolf surged beneath his skin, snarling, restless. For the first time since he'd become alpha, he let the shift come without restraint. Bones cracked, muscles reshaped. He hit the ground as a massive black wolf, eyes burning like coals in the night. His paws slammed the earth, carrying him across the ravine, through the charred remains of the western trees where Magnus' army had scorched the land. The world was death and ash, but her scent cut through it all. Jasmine, smoke, and blood. Behind him his pack followed, loyal, silent, hungry for vengeance. Shadowkeep loomed on the horizon, an ancient fortress carved into obsidian cliffs, cursed ground that even the crows avoided. Rumors said Magnus had bound shadow spirits to its walls, feeding them with the souls of wolves he'd broken. Ronan didn't care about rumors. He was going to break in and tear the bastard apart. Inside the keep, Lyra's chains burned against her skin, silver laced with wolfsbane. Every breath was agony. She was on her knees, bound to the floor of a circular chamber bathed in sickly purple light. The air reeked of damp stone and old magic. Her magic had nearly run dry after Magnus had ripped her from the ritual, cutting the bond before it sealed. But she wasn't broken. Not yet. Still breathing. Magnus sneered as he stepped into view, his long cloak trailing behind him like smoke. His violet eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "You mooncrests are persistent little weeds." Lyra lifted her head. Blood matted her hair. Her lip was split, but her gaze didn't waver. "You'll never stop the prophecy," she spat. "We've already begun the bond." Magnus knelt in front of her, brushing a bloodied curl from her face. "And I'll see it undone." "You think love is stronger than death." His grin turned feral. "Let's test that." She didn't flinch when he raised the blade. She focused not on him, not on the chains, but on the stone beneath her. The old magic. Her fingers twitched. She whispered under her breath, ancient words Elda had taught her in Halwyn. The silver fox had said she still had power left, buried deep. Now she summoned it. A surge of heat pulsed through her veins, bursting from her chest like wildfire. The chains vibrated. The shadows recoiled. Cracks formed along the rune-etched barrier surrounding the room. Magnus hissed, but he was too late to stop it. The outer wall exploded. A massive black wolf charged through the smoke, fangs bared, eyes locked on Lyra. "Ronan!" His roar shattered the air. Magnus turned, but Ronan was already shifting mid-leap, back into his human form, blade in hand, fury in every muscle. Their swords clashed in a flash of steel. Sparks danced across the stone. Magnus was fast, but Ronan was faster now. Fueled by rage and love and the bond that still pulsed between him and Lyra, unfinished but alive. Lyra's chains cracked with the remnants of her spell. She struggled to her feet, stumbling forward. Then it happened. In a single blur of movement, Magnus spun, grabbed her by the arm, and plunged the blade into her side. No! Ronan's scream tore through the chamber as Lyra crumpled to the ground. Blood pooled beneath her. Her eyes fluttered. Her hand reached for Ronan, but her lips couldn't form the words. Magnus vanished in a swirl of shadows, and Ronan dropped to his knees beside her, hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. "Stay with me," he whispered, voice breaking. "Stay." Her breathing faltered. The bond between them pulsed once, twice, then went silent. Chapter 11. The chamber stank of blood and broken magic. Ronan cradled Lyra's body, his chest heaving, blood slick on his hands. Not just hers, but his own from fighting through the Shadowclaw wolves who dared block his path. Her skin was too cold. Her breaths came shallow and sharp, each one weaker than the last. "Lyra!" His voice cracked, but he didn't care. "Don't do this. Don't leave me." Her eyes fluttered open, dull silver flickering beneath lashes sticky with blood. "Ronan!" she coughed. Blood stained her lips. "The ritual. You have to finish it. Before the eclipse." "No." He gripped her tighter, shaking his head. "I'm not letting you die to save the pack. I'll find another way." "There is no other way," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as they reached toward the marking etched into his chest, the symbol of the Alpha line. "You have to let go." He knew what she meant. The bond couldn't seal unless both sacrificed. His title, her magic. "I won't lose you again," he said, voice hoarse. "You won't," she murmured. "Not if we do this together." Above them, through the shattered roof of the keep, the blood moon began to rise, its light casting an ominous red hue across the stone. The eclipse was minutes away. Ronan pressed his forehead to hers. His pulse raced. "I give up my legacy for you," he said. The words hit the earth like thunder. The Alpha mark burned, then vanished from his skin in a sear of white-hot pain. Power rushed out of him, a torrent of dominance and bloodline stretching back generations. It roared in protest, then fell silent. He collapsed beside Lyra, panting, his body reeling. Lyra, with her last strength, pushed herself upright. Her eyes turned silver bright. She whispered the moon crest incantation, voice quivering but clear. Her hands, slick with blood, carved a rune into the stone floor, the final sigil of their ancestors. Her fingers trembled. Her magic coiled inside her, resisting, not out of rebellion, but sorrow. "I give my magic for him," she said, barely above a breath. The moment the words left her lips, the chamber shook. Light burst from the ground beneath them, spiraling upward, lashing out in radiant arcs of white fire. A wind howled through the broken keep, the kind not born of air but ancient spirits awakening. Lyra screamed as the magic tore from her chest. It wasn't just pain, it was her. The Mooncrest magic was who she was, seer, protector, blood of the first witch. But she gave it anyway. Their blood pooled together on the sacred rune. Alpha blood, Mooncrest blood. A crack split the floor. Then the curse shattered. The very air rippled. The barrier around Silver Hollow collapsed with a thunderous groan. Across the territory, wolves dropped to their knees, gasping as the ancestral weight lifted. 1,000 years of binding magic undone. But it wasn't over. Not yet. From the shadows beyond the crumbling archway, a figure emerged, taller, broader, no longer entirely human. Magnus. The blood moon glowed, deep red, and his body contorted. Bones snapped, flesh warped. His eyes, once violet, turned void black. "What have you done?" he growled, voice inhuman. His skin peeled back, replaced by scaled shadow. Horns erupted from his temples. Claws like obsidian scythes gleamed in the red light. Lyra collapsed against Ronan, barely conscious. Ronan rose, heart pounding, fury igniting. Before him stood something no longer wolf. Magnus, reborn under the blood moon, unleashed a roar that cracked the stone, and the ground beneath them began to split. Chapter 12. The earth bled fire beneath the blood moon. Ronan's boots scraped the stone as he stepped forward, shielding Lyra's fragile, crumpled form with his body. His eyes locked on the creature Magnus had become. No longer man, not truly wolf. Shadow coiled around him like armor, muscles bulging, skin an obsidian shell. Horns curled from his temples like a cursed crown, and from his throat came a guttural snarl that made the trees beyond the ruined keep shiver. "You were never worthy of this power," Magnus rumbled, voice layered with something not of this world. "You cling to love like its strength. It will break you." Ronan didn't answer with words. He shifted. Bones cracked, fur tore through skin, claws extended. His wolf form exploded outward, not just any wolf, but the Alpha-born, awakened by blood and sacrifice. His coat shimmered dark silver, eyes molten gold, streaked with pain and fury. He stood taller, broader, the mark of ancient lineages pulsing beneath his fur. Magnus lunged. They met in midair like thunder crashing into fire. Claws tore, teeth sank into flesh. They rolled, slammed into the broken columns of a sacred keep, granite cracking beneath their weight. Ronan's jaws snapped at Magnus' throat but caught only shadow. Magnus retaliated with a backhand swipe that hurled Ronan into the remains of a pillar. The ground split where he landed. Pain bloomed in Ronan's ribs. His vision blurred, but he stood. Magnus grinned, black blood leaking from his jaw. Still alive? How disappointing. They clashed again, a blur of fong and fury. Every strike from Magnus felt like a boulder, unnatural, cursed. But Ronan fought like a wolf possessed. For Lyra, for Silver Hollow, for everything Magnus had tried to destroy. A scream tore through the chaos. Ronan! Lyra, crawling toward the center of the ruins, blood soaking her dress. Her magic was nearly gone, stripped by the ritual, but a flicker of it remained. Just enough. Her palm lit with silver fire. Ronan caught her gaze and understood. As Magnus rose for a final blow, Lyra threw the magic. A thread of pure mooncrest flame. It struck Magnus in the chest. Not strong enough to kill him, but it weakened him. Shadow peeled back from his skin. He staggered. Ronan lunged. He drove his claws into Magnus' exposed ribs, twisted, and sank his fangs into the monster's throat. Magnus howled, a sound of death, fury, and disbelief. His body spasmed. Shadow poured from his mouth and eyes. Then he crumbled, not just to the ground, to ash. Silence fell. The blood moon dimmed. Across the valley, the Shadowclaw wolves, sensing their alpha's death, scattered into the trees. Their howls turned to whimpers. The battle was over. Ronan shifted back, every limb shaking. He crawled to Lyra, collapsed beside her. "Lyra!" His voice broke as he pulled her into his arms. "It's over. We did it. You did it." Her lips trembled in a faint smile. "We did together." But her skin was too cold again, her breath too faint, her eyes fluttered. "Lyra!" Ronan cupped her face. "Stay with me. Please, stay." Her eyes closed, and this time they didn't open. Chapter 13. Time was a broken thing. Ronan sat in the dim light of the moonlit ruins, his body aching, his soul splintered. He had fought and bled, and now all he had was Lyra. Her chest rose and fell slowly, but her eyes remained closed. Her once vibrant skin was pale, drained of life. Even the moon's light couldn't warm her. The spell of sacrifice had drained them both. Yet she was still here, alive, at least in the fragile sense of the word. His fingers hovered above her chest, trembling as they hovered over the scar where the ritual had left its mark. The bond between them had fractured everything. Him, her, their world. But he couldn't regret it. Not when it meant she was here, breathing. That's all he needed. Just her breath. "Do you remember, Lyra?" he whispered, his voice breaking the silence. "The first time I held you? You didn't belong to me then. You never did. But you came to me like the pull of the moon. And you never left." He leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers, trying to push back the ache in his heart. He would give anything to have her return to him fully. He would bear this agony forever if it meant seeing her eyes open again. The night deepened around them, stars swirling in the sky above like whispers of fate. He had told her stories before, their history, the fights they had faced, the bond that had saved them from destruction. He had whispered those tales, stories of their strength and love. But it felt as though all those words were nothing compared to the silence now. Her chest rose with a shallow breath, barely enough to ease the tension in his heart. Yet it was something, a sign, a flicker of life. Ronan closed his eyes, his hand clutching hers, unwilling to let go. The moon shone brighter, piercing through the cracks in the old walls of the ruins. The light shimmered, touching her skin, making her dark hair ripple as though it was alive. It wasn't enough to bring her back, but it was enough to stir something deep within her. Her wolf, still trapped within her soul, began to stir. A soft tremor passed through her body. Her hand twitched. Ronan's heart skipped. His breath caught in his throat. Her eyes fluttered open. "Lyra!" Her gaze locked onto his. It wasn't the dazed look of someone lost in a dream. No, she was here, grounded in the moment, but confusion clouded her eyes. For a heartbeat, she didn't move, just stared up at him with wide, searching eyes. "Ronan!" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of all their shared struggles, their love and their torment. He swallowed hard, his throat thick with emotion. "You're back. You're really back." Her brow furrowed, and her lips parted as if she wanted to say something. The moonlight around them seemed to pulse with energy as if it were watching, waiting. She took a shallow breath, trying to push herself up, but her body trembled. She winced, collapsing back into his arms with a weak groan. He cradled her head in his lap, brushing the strands of hair from her face. "Take it easy. You're still weak. You've been unconscious for days. Please just rest." But her gaze was unyielding. It pierced him like a knife. "Ronan." He cupped her face with his hand. "What is it, Lyra? What do you need?" She shook her head slightly, blinking as her vision seemed to clear. Her chest rose and fell erratically, like the slow ebb of a tide. The air around them felt electric, like something had shifted. Her lips parted again, her breath shallow. "What did we give up to be free?" Ronan froze, his heart stilled in his chest as the weight of her words settled between them. heavy with the truth neither of them wanted to face. What had they given up? The sacrifice was too much, too overwhelming. He had given up his claim as Alpha. He had renounced his legacy, his pack, his future, all to keep her safe, to break the curse. And she had sacrificed her Mooncrest magic, the very essence of who she was, her power, her birthright. But in the end, was it enough? His voice caught in his throat, and he could only squeeze her hand in response. There were no words that could explain it. Not yet. He didn't know how to explain the cost of freedom, the weight of the choice that had broken them both. And then, as though sensing the darkness still lingering within him, her eyes softened. Her hand reached up, touching his cheek gently, her thumb brushing the line of his jaw. "We're still here," she whispered. But as the words left her lips, the moon seemed to shine brighter, as though reacting to something unseen. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin once more, faint but unmistakable. The bond they shared, torn and scarred, still thrummed between them. The silence was broken by a distant howl, a long, hollow cry, echoing through the valley. Ronan's breath hitched. It wasn't just any howl. It was a warning. The Shadowclaw pack was not finished. Chapter 14. The winds of change had come, sweeping through the forest with a quiet force. The world felt different. The land hummed with a kind of restlessness, as though it, too, was waiting for the next chapter of their lives to unfold. Ronan stood on the edge of the sacred grove, his gaze sweeping over the untouched earth, the place that had once been a site of power and fear, now quiet, serene. The scrolls, once the source of so much pain, were now buried beneath the roots of an ancient oak, their secrets swallowed by the earth. Lyra stood beside him, her body leaning into the cool breeze, her hand resting on the stone she had touched so long ago. There was no longer the feeling of being bound, trapped by fate. She was free, free of the curse, free of the weight that had once held her. Her wolf, the one that had been bound to the moon, now stretched out beneath her skin, her freedom palpable in every movement. Lyra's eyes glinted, the wildness of her soul no longer contained. She could feel the pull of the wild earth beneath her feet, the blood of her ancestors coursing through her veins, no longer tethered to the moon's command. "Do you feel it?" Ronan asked, his voice quiet but filled with a reverence that had been absent before. Lyra glanced at him, her lips curving into a soft smile, one that didn't feel like a fragile thing anymore. "I do," she whispered. "I'm no longer bound. I'm finally free." Ronan let out a breath, watching her closely, as though trying to memorize the way she looked in this moment of peace after the chaos. The weight of responsibility that had once hung heavy on his shoulders had disappeared. The pack, the territory, it was all behind him now. His heart was no longer torn between duty and love. He had made his choice. "I've appointed a new Alpha in training," Ronan said, his voice carrying a hint of finality. "Someone who will lead with strength, but also with heart. Someone who knows the land and understands the people. It's time for me to step aside." Lyra turned to him, her brow furrowing as she studied his face. "You've given it all up for us." He nodded slowly, his eyes dark with emotion. "For you, for our future. I won't be standing in front of the pack anymore, Lyra. I'm walking beside you now. This journey, this path, it's ours to take together." A silence fell between them. The words felt like the last piece of a puzzle falling into place. There was no room for regret, no lingering questions about what could have been. There was only the here and now, the wind in the trees, the whispers of the earth beneath their feet, and the future stretching out before them. "Together," she repeated softly, her voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a long moment, letting the wind wash over them, feeling the sacredness of the land around them. They were no longer bound by the weight of the past. They were free. The journey to the sacred grove had been a long one, but it had led them here, to a place of renewal. The scrolls were buried, their secrets hidden deep within the earth. A promise had been made, and now the world was theirs to shape. Lyra took Ronan's hand, the warmth of his skin grounding her. She could feel the pulse of his heartbeat in her palm, steady and strong. They walked side by side through the grove, the light of the moon dancing in the shadows of the trees. The air was thick with magic, but it was no longer oppressive. It was light, expansive, filled with possibility. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless but not afraid. It was a feeling Lyra had never known before. Freedom, wild and untamed, yet filled with the promise of something more. Something that had been lost for too long, but was now reborn. As they reached the center of the grove, where the ancient stones lay, Lyra stopped and turned to Ronan. He met her gaze, his eyes full of understanding, full of love. They had come so far, they had faced so much, and now they stood on the precipice of something new. "The moon has always been a part of me," she said, her voice low, the truth in her words wrapping around them both like a shield. "But it doesn't control me anymore. I'm not just Mooncrest. I'm something more." Ronan nodded, his expression soft. "And I'm not just an alpha. I'm your partner. Nothing else matters." Lyra smiled, the weight of the world lifting from her shoulders. Together, then, forever. But just as they were about to share a kiss, a rustling sound came from the shadows. Ronan's senses went on alert immediately, his body tensing as his eyes flicked toward the movement. Lyra's gaze followed, her heart racing as she saw a pair of glowing eyes peering at them from the darkness. A pup, silver, sleek and small, stood on the edge of the grove, watching them intently. It was unlike any wolf they had seen before, its fur gleaming like starlight under the moon's glow. The creature's eyes were full of curiosity, but there was something else there, too, something that Ronan couldn't place. Ronan took a step forward, his heart pounding, but Lyra's hand reached out to stop him. She didn't feel threatened. The wolf pup didn't feel like an enemy. Instead, it felt like a symbol of something new. A new beginning, perhaps, or a new danger that was yet to be understood. Ronan's breath caught in his throat as the pup tilted its head, its gaze never leaving them. It was like the creature had been waiting for them, for this very moment. The pup gave a low growl, and in that instant Ronan's gut twisted. A shadow loomed behind it, a figure that was no longer just a wolf. It was something else, something ancient. Chapter 15. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of the earth, the forest, the moon. Ronan and Lyra stood together at the edge of the ancient woods, looking out at the sprawling land that had once been a battleground. Now it was a canvas, a place of endless possibility. The forest stretched before them like an untouched dream, bathed in the silver glow of the full moon. Lyra felt the pull of it in her bones, the whisper of the wild calling her, inviting her to run. She looked at Ronan, his face lit by the moonlight, his eyes glowing with something she had never seen before. Peace, freedom, and an unspoken promise. "We've come so far," Lyra murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Ronan smiled, the warmth of it spreading through his chest. "But we're not done yet." They had fought together, against Magnus, against fate itself. They had sacrificed so much, yet here they were, standing on the precipice of something new. Lyra's heart swelled with gratitude and love, and in that moment, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. They were no longer just wolves of the Mooncrest. They were something more. They were whole. She stepped closer to him, feeling the bond between them hum with energy. With a single movement, Ronan shifted into his wolf form, his massive, powerful body rippling with strength. His fur shimmered silver under the moonlight, and his eyes glowed with a feral intensity. Lyra followed, letting the wolf within her stir, letting the power of the moon awaken deep inside her soul. Her body shifted with a fluid grace, fur rippling across her skin, her senses expanding, sharpening. For the first time, she felt the full extent of her power, free from the chains of the curse. She stood before him, now a wolf in her own right, but it was different. She wasn't bound to the moon's whim anymore. She was in control. She was whole. Ronan let out a low growl, the sound full of pride and something else, something tender. He lowered his head, nuzzling her gently. The connection between them, the bond forged in fire and blood, was unbreakable now. It was more than love. It was the unification of two souls that had been torn apart and remade. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they stood there, two wolves side by side, the moon their witness. It was as if the world had fallen silent, watching them, waiting for them to move. They were no longer bound by the past. They were free. Without a word, without hesitation, they turned and ran together. Their paws hit the earth in unison, a rhythmic pounding that echoed in the quiet night. The wind rushed past them, wild and untamed, as they sprinted through the forest. Trees blurred past in a flash of green and brown, but Lyra's senses were heightened, every detail sharp and clear. She could smell the scent of the earth, the fresh leaves, the dampness of the soil beneath her paws. She could hear Ronan's breath beside her, feel the pulse of his energy in perfect sync with hers. They ran for the joy of it, for the freedom of it. The world felt endless. The land, the forest, the moon, it all stretched out before them, waiting for them to carve their own path, to leave their mark on a world that had once tried to break them. They were no longer broken. They had never been broken. They had only been unfinished. And now they were whole. As they ran, side by side, the bond between them deepened. Their bodies, their souls, their very beings moved in harmony, like two parts of a single, unstoppable force. It wasn't just the moon that guided them anymore. It was their love, their unity, their shared strength. They ran together as equals. They ran together as one. And under the full moon, they were finally free. They were never broken, just unfinished. This has been the Lunar Curse, a story of love that ran, bled, and came back stronger. Thank you for watching the Lunar Curse on I Love Romance Stories. If this tale of sacrifice, soulmates, and second chances moved you, don't forget to like, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe for more passionate werewolf stories that grip the heart and never let go. Stay tuned for more thrilling tales of love and fate. Until next time, keep your heart wild.